humans entered the Dominion and met the void unshaken. The stars stretched endlessly before the UES Pathfinder as it traveled through the dark ocean of space. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back, watching the view screen with careful eyes. Today would change everything for humanity. Today, they would meet the galaxy's rulers. "Captain, we're receiving the coordinates now," Lieutenant Park said from his station. His voice carried a mix of excitement and fear that everyone on the bridge felt. "They're real. The signal is coming from exactly where they said it would be," Sarah nodded slowly. 3 months ago, Earth had received a message from space. Not random noise or natural phenomena, but a clear invitation written in mathematics that any intelligent species could understand. The message was simple. "You are invited to join the Galactic Dominion. Follow these coordinates. Come in peace." The nations of Earth had argued for weeks about what to do. Some wanted to ignore it. Others wanted to send weapons. In the end, they built the Pathfinder, a ship designed for diplomacy, and chose Sarah to lead humanity's first meeting with alien civilizations. "Take us in, Mr. Park," Sarah ordered. "Nice and slow. Let's not give them any reason to think we're hostile." The Pathfinder moved forward, and soon the coordinates revealed their destination. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Before them stood a structure so massive that it made Earth's moon look like a pebble. It was a station, clearly artificial, with lights that glowed in colors she had never seen before. Ships of every shape and size docked at its countless ports. Some looked like crystals, others like living organisms, and some defied any description at all. "My God," whispered Dr. James Okonkwo, the chief scientist. "How many species do you think are here?" "Dozens at least," Sarah replied. "Maybe more. This is it, people. This is first contact, but not just with one species. We're meeting an entire galactic civilization." The communication console beeped. A voice came through, speaking perfect English, though it had a strange quality, as if multiple voices spoke at once. "Human vessel Pathfinder, you are cleared for docking at Bay 47. Please proceed slowly and follow the guidance beacons. Welcome to Nexus Station." Sarah glanced at her crew. They were scared but trying to hide it. She understood. Everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe was about to change. "Let's go meet our neighbors," she said with more confidence than she felt. The docking procedure was smooth. The Dominion's technology guided them in with invisible hands, and soon the Pathfinder was locked in place. Sarah selected a team of 6, including Dr. Okonkwo, Lieutenant Park, and 3 security officers. They wore their dress uniforms, dark blue with Earth's flag on the shoulder, and carried no visible weapons, though each had a small sidearm hidden beneath their jackets, just in case. The airlock opened and they stepped into Nexus Station. The corridor beyond was enormous, with ceilings that stretched 50 feet high. The walls were made of some material that seemed to shift colors in the light. And everywhere, there were aliens. A creature that looked like a floating jellyfish with crystalline tentacles drifted past, paying them no attention. A group of beings that resembled upright lizards with 4 arms walked together, speaking in clicks and whistles. Something that might have been a living plant shuffled along on root-like legs. Sarah tried not to stare, but it was impossible. Every direction held wonders that would take Earth scientists decades to understand. "This way, humans," a voice said. They turned to see a creature approaching them. It stood on 2 legs like a human, but there the similarity ended. Its skin was pale blue and seemed to glow faintly. Its head was larger than a human's, with huge dark eyes that held an unsettling intelligence. It wore robes of deep purple. "I am Calith of the Krathani. I will be your guide and translator during your time here." "Thank you," Sarah said, offering her hand. Calith looked at it with curiosity, then reached out with a 3-fingered hand and grasped hers gently. His skin was cool and smooth like polished stone. "An interesting greeting custom," Calith said. "We shall remember it. Follow me, please. The council is eager to meet you." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch for miles. Calith explained that Nexus Station was over 50,000 years old, built by the Dominion as a neutral ground where all member species could meet. Currently, 47 species belong to the Dominion, with hundreds more in various stages of contact and integration. 47 species, Dr. Okonkwo repeated in amazement. "And how long has the Dominion existed?" "Over 200,000 of your years," Calith replied casually, as if discussing the weather. "Though the exact date is difficult to determine, The Dominion has existed in one form or another for longer than most species have records. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. 200,000 years. When the Dominion was being formed, humans were still living in caves on Earth struggling to master fire. What could humanity possibly offer to a civilization so old and advanced? They entered a massive chamber that took Sarah's breath away. It was shaped like an amphitheater, with seats rising in circles around a central platform. But the seats were not empty. Hundreds of aliens of dozens of different species sat watching as the humans entered. At the top of the chamber on a raised platform sat 5 beings that radiated authority. The Council of 5, Calith whispered. The leaders of the Dominion's most powerful species. The Crithani, my people, sit in the center. To the left are the Vex Collective, and to the right the Elorian Empire. The other 2 seats rotate among the remaining species. Sarah led her team to the center platform. The weight of hundreds of alien eyes pressed down on her. She straightened her back and lifted her chin. She represented humanity now. She could not show weakness. The Crithani in the center seat stood. It was taller than Calith, and its robes were gold instead of purple. When it spoke, its voice filled the chamber without seeming loud. Humans of Earth, I am High Arbiter Velquin, speaker for the Dominion Council. You have been invited here to learn of the greater galaxy and to understand your place within it. We are honored to be here, Sarah replied, her voice steady. Humanity comes in peace seeking friendship and knowledge. Peace is assumed, Velquin said. All who enter Nexus Station come in peace or they do not leave. As for knowledge, that will be provided. But first you must understand the structure of the Dominion. What followed was a long explanation of how the Dominion worked. Species were ranked in categories from 1 to 5, based on their technology, culture, and contributions to galactic society. Category 1 species like the Crithani, Vex, and Elorians held the most power and made the important decisions. Category 5 species were the newest members, given limited rights and expected to prove themselves over time. Humanity, Velquin said, and Sarah heard something in his voice she didn't like, has been evaluated as a Category 5 species. You are primitive by Dominion standards. Your technology is crude. Your civilization is young and unstable. You have only just achieved faster-than-light travel, something most species accomplish within their first 10,000 years of recorded history. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, but pushed it down. We may be young, but we are capable. We built the Pathfinder in 3 years after receiving your message. We crossed space to meet you, despite having no idea what we would find. That shows determination and courage. It shows recklessness, Velquin replied coolly. Courage without wisdom is dangerous. You will remain here as observers for 1 Earth year. During that time you will learn Dominion law and customs. After the year, you will be offered full integration into the Dominion, assuming you prove capable of following our rules. And if we refuse integration? Sarah asked. The chamber fell silent. Velquin's large eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that made her skin crawl. No species refuses integration, he said quietly. The galaxy is dangerous for those who stand alone. There are threats you cannot imagine. Pirates, hostile empires, and the void. The void? Dr. Okonkwo asked. Regions of space where ships disappear, another council member said. This one was part of the Vex Collective, its body a mass of writhing tentacles that seemed to share a single consciousness, where entire fleets vanish without a trace, where the laws of physics break down. The Dominion protects its members from such places. Those outside our protection face these dangers alone. Sarah looked at her team, then back at the council. We will observe and learn as you suggest. But humanity values its freedom. We will not surrender our right to choose our own path. Velquin smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Of course. All species say that at first. You will learn as they did that some choices are illusions. Welcome to the Dominion, humans. You have much to discover about the galaxy, and about yourselves. As Calith led them from the chamber, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they had just walked into a trap. The Dominion spoke of peace and cooperation, but beneath the words, she sensed something else. Control, domination. The very things humanity had fought against throughout its history. But they were here now, and turning back was not an option. Humanity would play the Dominion's game, at least for a while. They would learn everything they could about these advanced species. Humans entered the Dominion and met the void. Unshaken 3 months had passed since the Pathfinder docked at Nexus Station, and Sarah Chen was starting to understand just how little humanity knew about the galaxy. Every day brought new revelations, and not all of them were pleasant. She sat in her quarters aboard the Pathfinder, reviewing reports from Earth. The governments back home were arguing as usual. Some wanted to accept whatever terms the Dominion offered. Others wanted to cut ties completely and return to isolation. A growing faction wanted to refuse the Dominion's rules but stay in contact, trying to walk a dangerous middle path. "Captain, you have a visitor," Lieutenant Park said over the intercom. "One of the Tillar." "He says it's urgent and private," Sarah frowned. The Tillar were a Category 4 species, small beings that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard. They rarely spoke to humans, seeming nervous whenever the two species crossed paths. "Send him in." The door opened and a Tillar entered quickly, looking over his shoulder as if afraid of being followed. He was small, barely reaching Sarah's waist, with golden feathers covering his body and bright, intelligent eyes. "Captain Chen," he said in a whisper, "thank you for seeing me. My name is Piptak. I had to speak with you, but no one can know I was here." "Why all the secrecy?" Sarah asked, gesturing for him to sit. He hopped onto a chair, his taloned feet gripping the edge. "Because the Dominion does not like when lower species talk to each other without supervision," Piptak said. His voice was high and musical but carried real fear. "They especially don't want anyone warning new species about the truth of integration." Sarah leaned forward, her attention fully focused now. "What truth?" Piptak looked at the door again, then spoke quickly. "The Dominion is not what it pretends to be. Yes, there is peace between the member species, and yes, the technology and knowledge they share is real. But integration is not a choice, not really. My people learned this 50 years ago. What happened? We were Category 5, like you. We observed for a year, just as the Council demanded. At the end, we were offered integration. The terms were simple. Give up our military. Give up control of our resources. Allow Dominion officials to oversee our government. Accept their laws as superior to our own. In exchange, we would receive technology and protection." "And you accepted?" Sarah asked. "We had no choice," Piptak said bitterly. 3 other species before us had refused. One was simply isolated, cut off from all galactic contact. The others— He trailed off, his feathers ruffling in distress. The others were dealt with more harshly. Pirates attacked their worlds. Accidents happened to their ships. Plagues broke out on their colonies. The Dominion claimed they had no involvement, but everyone knew the truth. "Accept integration or face destruction." Sarah felt cold rage building in her chest. "They threatened you." "Not directly. The Dominion never threatens directly. But the message was clear, so we accepted, and now we are slaves in everything but name. We cannot make our own decisions. We cannot explore space without permission. We exist to serve the Category 1 and 2 species, providing labor and resources while they take credit for all progress." "Then why are you telling me this?" Sarah asked. "If the Dominion finds out—" "I know the risk," Piptak said. "But I have watched your people these past months. You are different from the others. You question everything. You don't simply accept what you're told. You adapt and learn quickly. Maybe, just maybe, you can find a way to resist that my people could not." Sarah stood and paced her quarters, thinking hard. "The year is almost over. Soon they'll make us the same offer they made you." "Yes," Piptak confirmed. "But there is one other option, though no one ever chooses it." "What option?" "The Void Trial," Piptak said quietly. "It's an ancient law from the early days of the Dominion. Any species offered integration can instead choose to undertake a mission into the void. If they succeed in return, they are granted full Category 1 status immediately, with all rights and privileges. They can join the Dominion as equals, not servants." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "But you said no one ever chooses it." "Why not?" "Because no one ever returns from the void," Piptak said simply. "In the entire history of the Dominion, over 200,000 years, not a single species has completed the Void Trial. Most are never heard from again. A few send back final messages describing horror and madness before their ships are destroyed. The trial is not a real choice. It's a death sentence for species too proud to submit." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything she had learned. Finally, she looked at Piptak and asked, "If your people could choose again, knowing what you know now, would you take the trial?" Piptak met her eyes, and in them Sarah saw the pain of 50 years of regret. "Yes," he whispered. "Better to die free than live as slaves. But we cannot choose again. Once integration is accepted, it cannot be undone." You, however, still have that chance. After Piptak left, Sarah called a meeting of her senior officers. She explained everything the Tillar had told her, watching their faces as the implications sank in. Dr. Okonkwo looked sick. Lieutenant Park looked angry. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, a broad-shouldered man who rarely spoke but always listened, just nodded slowly as if he had suspected something like this all along. "We need to contact Earth," Park said. "Let them know what we're dealing with." "Already done," Sarah replied. "I sent an encrypted message an hour ago. But it will take weeks for them to respond, and we might not have that long. The Council has requested a meeting in 3 days to discuss humanity's integration. So what do we do?" Dr. Okonkwo asked. Sarah looked at each of them in turn. "We have 3 choices. Accept integration and become subjects of the Dominion. Refuse and face isolation or worse. Or choose the Void trial." "That's suicide," Park protested. "You heard what Piptak said. No one survives. No one using Dominion methods," Marcus said, speaking for the first time. Everyone turned to look at him. He shrugged his massive shoulders. "Think about it. Every species that tried the trial was using Dominion technology and following Dominion strategies. They all failed. Maybe that's the problem." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "I've been studying their technology," Marcus explained. "It's impressive, sure, but it's also rigid. They have one way of doing things and they never deviate. Their ships all use the same power systems. Their weapons all work on the same principles. Everything is standardized and controlled. That makes them efficient, but it also makes them predictable." Dr. Okonkwo caught on quickly. "And humans are anything but predictable. We improvise, we adapt. We use whatever works, even if it's not elegant or sophisticated." "Exactly," Marcus said. "Our technology might be primitive by Dominion standards, but it's ours. We built it from scratch. We understand it completely because we created it ourselves. Maybe that gives us an advantage they don't expect." Sarah felt a spark of hope. "We'd still need more information about the Void. What it is, why ships disappear there." "I can help with that," Dr. Okonkwo said. "I've been accessing the Dominion's public databases. There's not much about the Void, but there are fragments, old reports, sensor readings. If I had more time, I might be able to piece together a theory." "You have 3 days," Sarah said. "Use them well." The next 3 days were the busiest of Sarah's life. Dr. Okonkwo barely slept, analyzing every scrap of information about the Void he could find. Marcus and his engineering team worked around the clock, preparing the Pathfinder for the worst. Lieutenant Park coordinated with the other 2 human ships that had arrived at Nexus Station. The science vessel Newton's Reach and the military escort Indomitable, making sure everyone was ready for whatever came next. Sarah spent her time meeting with representatives from other species, trying to learn everything she could about the Dominion's politics and power structure. Most were cautious, clearly monitored by the Council, but a few, like Piptak, were willing to share secrets in whispered conversations. She learned that the Dominion was not the unified alliance it pretended to be. There were factions and rivalries beneath the surface. The Krithani, Vex Collective, and Alorian Empire competed constantly for influence. Smaller species lived in fear of displeasing their masters, and everyone, even the powerful Category 1 species, seemed afraid of something they wouldn't name. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. Sarah stood once again in the great chamber before the Council of 5. This time, all 3 human ships' captains stood with her, Captain Rodriguez of the Indomitable and Captain Zhao of the Newton's Reach. They represented humanity together. High Arbiter Velquin stood, his expression unreadable. "Humans of Earth," he began, "you have observed the Dominion for the required period. The Council has discussed your species at length. We are prepared to offer you integration, with the standard terms. You will be granted Category 5 status initially, with the opportunity to advance over time through service and contribution. Your technology will be upgraded. Your people will be protected. Your civilization will endure. All we ask in return is your cooperation and loyalty." Sarah took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would define humanity's future. She thought of Piptak and his people living as slaves. She thought of the other species that had refused and disappeared. Humans entered the Dominion and met the Void. Unshaken, the 3 human ships flew in formation through the darkness of space, moving toward a region that had been marked as forbidden for thousands of years. The Pathfinder led the way, with the Newton's Reach on its left and the Indomitable on its right. Together, they carried the hopes of an entire species into the unknown. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder, watching the view screen as normal space began to change around them. The stars, which had been steady points of light, now seemed to flicker and shift. Colors that had no name appeared at the edges of her vision, then vanished before she could focus on them. "We're crossing the boundary," Dr. Okonkwo reported from his station. His voice was tight with tension. "Sensor readings are starting to get strange. Physics isn't behaving the way it should." "Define strange," Sarah said calmly, though her heart was racing. "Everything," Okonkwo replied. "Time is moving at different speeds in different areas. Light is bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. Our instruments keep giving contradictory readings. According to this sensor, we're moving forward. According to that one, we're standing still. And this one says we're moving backward." "Captain Rodriguez here," a voice came through from the Indomitable. "We're seeing the same thing. My weapons officer says his targeting systems can't lock onto anything because space itself keeps shifting." "Newton's Reach reporting," Captain Zhao added. "Our science team is recording everything, but frankly, none of this makes sense. It's like the rules of reality are just suggestions here." Sarah took a deep breath. "All ships reduce speed by half. Let's not rush into this. Park, try to establish a communication link with the Dominion. Let's see if we can still call for help if we need to." Lieutenant Park worked at his console for several minutes, then shook his head. "No good, Captain. All frequencies are blocked. It's not jamming exactly. The signals just seem to disappear into nothing. We're on our own." "All right," Sarah said. "Then we stick to the plan. Marcus, how are our systems holding up?" Marcus Webb's voice came from engineering. "Better than expected, actually. The Void is playing hell with anything sophisticated, but our basic systems are fine. The fusion reactor is stable. Life support is working. Engines are responding normally. It's like the Void doesn't notice our primitive technology." "That matches what I've been thinking," Okonkwo said excitedly. "Despite the danger, I've been reviewing the old reports about ships that disappeared here. They all had one thing in common: advanced Dominion technology. Quantum drives, zero-point energy, exotic matter reactors. The more sophisticated the technology, the faster the ships failed." "So being primitive is an advantage?" Sarah asked. "Maybe," Okonkwo replied. "Or maybe it's not about being primitive. Maybe it's about being different. The Dominion has been using the same basic technologies for thousands of years. They've refined them, made them incredibly efficient, but they're all based on the same principles. Our technology is completely different because we developed it independently. Maybe the Void affects Dominion tech specifically." Before Sarah could respond, an alarm blared. "Contact!" Park shouted. "Multiple objects ahead. They're not moving, but they're big. Really big." The view screen adjusted and Sarah felt her blood run cold. Floating in the Void were ships. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They were from every species she had seen at Nexus Station, and many she didn't recognize. Some looked ancient, their hulls corroded and dark. Others seemed newer, with light still flickering weakly on their surfaces. "This is a graveyard," Captain Rodriguez whispered over the comm. "All the ships that tried the Void trial, they're all here. Not just trial ships," Okonkwo said, his voice shaking. "Captain, I'm reading some of these hull designs. That one is Krathani, but the design is over 50,000 years old. That one matches descriptions of the Vex Collective's first colony ships from 100,000 years ago. This isn't just from the trials. This is from the entire history of the Dominion." Sarah stared at the field of dead ships. How many beings had died here? How many species had sent their best and brightest into the Void, only to lose them forever? The weight of all that death pressed down on her. "Captain, we should turn back," Park said quietly. "This is suicide. No one survives here." "Not yet," Sarah said firmly. "We came here to understand the Void, and we're not leaving until we do. All ships proceed slowly. Stay in formation, and everyone keep your eyes open." They moved through the graveyard carefully, scanning the dead ships as they passed. Some had been torn apart by unknown forces. Others showed no damage at all, as if their crews had simply vanished. A few had messages carved or painted on their hulls in languages both known and unknown. "Turn back," one message read in Galactic Common. "The Void hungers," said another. "Reality ends here," warned a third. "Newton's Reach to Pathfinder. Captain Zhao's voice came through. We're detecting a structure ahead. It's massive and it's definitely artificial. I see it, Sarah confirmed. On the view screen, something was emerging from the darkness. It was a tower, or maybe a ship, or maybe something that was both and neither. It was miles tall, made of material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid, and it was pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. Should we investigate? Park asked. Sarah was about to answer when the Indomitable suddenly jerked to the side. Indomitable here, Rodriguez shouted. We're under attack. Something's draining our power systems. I see them, one of the Indomitable's crew screamed. In the walls. In the space between space. They're everywhere. Sarah's view screen flickered, and for just a moment she saw them too. Things that existed in the gaps of reality. They had no real form, just suggestions of shape that hurt to look at. They flowed through space like water, and wherever they touched the Indomitable, systems began to fail. Marcus, Sarah shouted. What's happening? They're feeding on the ship's power, Marcus replied. The reactor's output is dropping. They're consuming the energy faster than we can produce it. If this keeps up, the Indomitable will be dead in minutes. Sarah's mind raced. The entities were attacking the most advanced ship in the fleet, the one with the biggest reactor and the most sophisticated weapons. Rodriguez, shut down all non-essential systems. Go to minimum power. But our weapons, we'll just give them more to feed on. Trust me. Shut everything down except life support and engines. There was a pause, then Rodriguez's voice came back. All right, Chen. Shutting down now. On the view screen, Sarah watched as the Indomitable went dark. Almost immediately, the entities began to lose interest. They drifted away from the darkened military ship and started moving toward the Newton's Reach, which had the most active sensors and computers. Zhao, Sarah called. Power down now! Captain Zhao didn't hesitate. She had seen what happened to the Indomitable and wasn't about to let it happen to her ship. The Newton's Reach went dark, and again the entities drifted away. Now they were coming toward the Pathfinder. Sarah watched them approach, these impossible beings that existed in the spaces between reality. Her crew looked at her with fear in their eyes, waiting for the order to shut down. But Sarah didn't give that order. Instead, she said quietly, Marcus, divert all power from the fusion reactor to the old backup batteries. The batteries? Marcus sounded confused. Captain, those are chemical batteries. Old Earth tech. We only keep them as an emergency backup. They can't power the whole ship. I know, Sarah said. That's the point. Do it. Marcus hesitated for only a second, then followed orders. The fusion reactor shut down and the Pathfinder began running on batteries that would have been considered outdated 100 years ago on Earth. The lights dimmed. The engines slowed. But they kept working. The entities reached the Pathfinder and swarmed around it, searching for the energy they craved. But there was nothing sophisticated for them to feed on. The batteries were simple, almost primitive. The entities circled the ship like sharks around prey they couldn't quite figure out how to eat. Then slowly they began to drift away. They had no interest in prey that offered so little reward. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. All ships, status report. Indomitable here, Rodriguez said. We're alive. Multiple systems are offline, but Marcus was right. When we shut down the reactor, they lost interest. Newton's Reach reporting, Zhao added. Same here. Our main computer is fried, but we're switching to backups. We'll make it. Good, Sarah said. Everyone listen to me. I think I understand now. The void isn't a place. It's not empty space with strange properties. It's inhabited by entities that feed on advanced technology. The more sophisticated your tech, the more they want it. That's why Dominion ships always fail here. They're like a feast for these things. But our ships survive because we're using simpler technology, Okonkwo said, understanding dawning on his face. Not just simpler, different. Technology that developed independently, not based on Dominion principles. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. The question is, what are these entities? Where did they come from? And more importantly, what's that structure they seem to be protecting? Only one way to find out, Marcus said. We go look. Sarah knew he was right, but she also knew they had to be smart about this. All right, but we do this carefully. Humans entered the Dominion and met the void. Unshaken, Sarah felt the presence in her mind grow stronger, but it wasn't painful or invasive. It was curious, like meeting someone new who wanted to understand you. The light from the massive structure pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Or maybe her heartbeat was matching its rhythm. She couldn't tell anymore. Captain Chen, Dr. Okonkwo whispered, his voice filled with awe. Are you seeing this? Yes, Sarah replied quietly. All of it. The structure began to change before their eyes. Pieces of it folded and unfolded in ways that hurt to watch, moving through dimensions that shouldn't exist. After a moment that felt like both a second and an eternity, something emerged. It was a being, though calling it that seemed insufficient. It existed in more directions than Sarah's eyes could process. But her brain somehow made sense of it anyway, translating what she saw into something she could understand. The being appeared as a tall, slender figure made of starlight and shadow. It had no face, but Sarah could feel its attention on her like the warmth of the sun. When it spoke, its voice filled not just the bridge of the Pathfinder, but the minds of everyone on all 3 ships. I am the Unshaken, it said, the last of the progenitors, the species you call the first builders. I have waited here for 200,000 of your years, testing those who claim to rule the galaxy, and in all that time none have been worthy to pass my trial. Until now. Why are you here? Sarah asked, finding her voice. Why wait in this place? The Unshaken moved closer to the ships, and Sarah saw the entities that had attacked them earlier, bowing before it, or doing whatever passed for bowing in their formless existence. This place is a prison, the Unshaken explained. When my species realized we had grown too powerful, too removed from the physical universe, we chose to transcend entirely. But I remained, by choice, to watch over what we left behind. I sealed myself here in the void to guard against those who would misuse our legacy. The Dominion, Marcus said from engineering, his voice carrying through the intercom. They've been using your people's technology. Yes, the Unshaken confirmed. The species you know as the Krithani found our ruins first. They learned to use our tools but never understood their purpose. They built an empire on stolen foundations and convinced others to join them. For thousands of generations they have ruled the galaxy with technology they did not earn, and wisdom they do not possess. Images flowed into Sarah's mind again, showing the true history. The Krithani had been a primitive species when they stumbled upon a progenitor facility. Instead of learning and growing, they had simply taken everything, keeping the secrets for themselves. They formed the Dominion not to share knowledge but to control it. Other species were allowed to join only if they submitted completely, ensuring the Krithani's position at the top would never be challenged. The Void Trial was your idea? Sarah asked. Yes, the Unshaken said. I created it as a way to identify species that might be worthy of the progenitor's true legacy. A species that could survive this place, that could think independently and adapt to the unknown, might deserve to know the truth and inherit what we left behind. But no one ever passed, Captain Rodriguez said from the Indomitable. Why now? What makes humans different? The Unshaken turned its attention to Rodriguez's ship, and Sarah felt it analyzing them with senses beyond her understanding. Every species that attempted the trial came here using Dominion technology and Dominion methods. They failed because they were trying to impress me with tools they did not create. They were like children wearing their parents' clothes, pretending to be adults. It moved back to the Pathfinder, and Sarah felt its focus on her specifically. But you are different. Your technology is primitive by galactic standards, yes. But it is yours. You built it from nothing, through trial and error, through creativity and determination. You came here not with the most powerful weapons, but with simple batteries and a willingness to adapt. That is what my people valued above all else. Not power, but the wisdom to use power correctly. So we passed your test? Lieutenant Park asked hesitantly. You survived it, the Unshaken corrected. The true test is what you do next. Come, I have something to show you. The massive structure began to open, creating a docking bay large enough to hold all 3 human ships. Sarah looked at her crew. They were scared, but they were also excited. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, of 1,000 lifetimes, to meet the last remnant of the species that had built galactic civilization, to learn from them directly instead of through the Dominion's twisted version of their legacy. All ships, Sarah ordered, dock with the structure. And everyone, remember your manners. We're guests here. The 3 ships moved slowly into the docking bay. As soon as they were inside, the opening sealed behind them, and atmosphere flooded the chamber. Gravity activated. Not the artificial gravity of rotating sections or gravity plating, but real gravity that came from the structure itself bending space. Sarah led a team off the Pathfinder, with Captain Rodriguez and Captain Zhao joining her along with their senior officers. The interior of the structure was like nothing Sarah had ever seen. The walls were covered in equations and diagrams that showed the fundamental laws of reality. Some of them Sarah recognized from human physics. Others were completely alien, describing forces and particles that humanity hadn't discovered yet. The Unshaken led them through corridors that seemed to change size and shape as they walked, always staying just the right dimensions to make them comfortable. Finally, they entered a vast chamber. In the center stood a pillar of light, and around it floated objects that made Sarah's breath catch. The true knowledge of the progenitors. The Unshaken said, "Everything we discovered, everything we built, everything we learned in 1,000,000 years of existence. It is all here, waiting for someone worthy to claim it." Sarah approached the pillar slowly, reaching out to touch it. The moment her fingers made contact, knowledge exploded in her mind. She saw how to build reactors that could power entire solar systems. She understood the mathematics of faster-than-light travel that made the Dominion's quantum drives look like children's toys. She glimpsed weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop stars. The power was intoxicating, overwhelming. Then she pulled her hand back. The Unshaken tilted its head in a gesture that might have been curiosity. "You refuse the gift?" "I'm not refusing," Sarah said carefully, her heart still racing from what she had experienced. "But I need to think about this. That much power, that much knowledge given all at once, it could destroy humanity as easily as save us. We're not ready for it." "Speak for yourself," Rodriguez muttered, eyeing the pillar hungrily. "With that kind of technology, we could protect Earth from any threat. We could stand as equals to any species in the galaxy. Or we could become the threat," Sarah countered. "Think about it, Rodriguez. The Crithani found progenitor technology and used it to dominate everyone else. They became tyrants because they got power without earning it. If we take this now, we might become just like them." "The human is wise," the Unshaken said, and there was approval in its voice. "This is the true test. Not whether you can survive the void, but whether you can resist the temptation of unearned power. Many species have stood where you stand now. All of them reached for the pillar immediately, thinking only of what they could gain. You are the first to hesitate, to consider the consequences." Captain Zhao stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. "What happens to species that take the knowledge unprepared?" "They burn," the Unshaken said simply. "Not physically, but culturally. They tear themselves apart fighting over the power. Or they become arrogant, believing themselves superior to all others. Or they stagnate, no longer needing to struggle and grow. Power without wisdom is poison. This is why the Dominion has slowly declined over the millennia. They have the tools of gods, but the minds of children." Sarah looked at her fellow captains and her crew. She saw the hunger for knowledge in Okonkwo's eyes, the desire for security in Rodriguez's posture, the pure curiosity in Zhao's expression. She understood all of it because she felt it too. But she also remembered why they had come here in the first place. "We came to the void to prove that humanity deserves freedom," Sarah said, "to show the Dominion that we won't submit to their rules. If we take this power now, we'll be just another species that built its civilization on someone else's achievements. We'll be no better than the Crithani. So what do you propose?" Rodriguez asked, frustration evident in his voice. "We just walk away? Leave all this here?" "No," Sarah said. "We take the knowledge we need to survive and grow at our own pace. Not everything at once, but gradually as we prove we can handle it responsibly. And we take one more thing." She turned to the Unshaken. "We take the truth. Everything you've shown us about the Dominion's lies. The real history of how they came to power. Evidence that their entire civilization is built on stolen technology." The Unshaken was silent for a long moment. Then it made a sound that might have been laughter. "You would expose them? Tear down the order they have built over 200,000 years?" Humans entered the Dominion and met the void, unshaken. The assembly hall at Nexus Station had never been so full. Every member species of the Dominion had sent representatives, and the observers' galleries were packed with beings from dozens of worlds. Word had spread quickly that the humans had returned from the void, something that had never happened in the entire recorded history of the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Sarah Chen stood in the center of the great chamber, feeling the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon her. Beside her stood Captain Rodriguez and Captain Zhao, along with Dr. Okonkwo, who carried the crystal the Unshaken had given them. The 3 damaged human ships were docked at the station, visible proof that they had truly entered the void and survived. On the council platform, High Arbiter Velquin sat rigid in his seat. His face, usually so controlled and superior, now showed clear signs of stress. The other council members seemed equally disturbed. The Vex Collective's tentacles writhed nervously. The Elorian representative leaned forward with intense interest. "This assembly is called to order," Velquin announced, his voice not as steady as usual. "The humans claim to have completed the Void Trial, an achievement not recorded in over 200,000 years. This is, of course, extraordinary. Before we grant them Category 1 status, as the ancient laws require, we must verify their claims. Captain Chen, tell us what happened in the void." Sarah stepped forward. "We will do better than tell you. We will show you." She nodded to Okonkwo, who placed the crystal on a pedestal in the center of the chamber. "This crystal contains the complete history of the progenitors, the species who built the technology the Dominion uses. It was given to us by the last surviving progenitor, who called himself the Unshaken." A murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Velquin's eyes widened. "That is impossible. The progenitors are a myth. The Dominion built its own technology through millennia of advancement." "That is a lie," Sarah said clearly, her voice carrying through the chamber. "And this crystal proves it. Dr. Okonkwo, if you would." Okonkwo activated the crystal. Immediately, holographic images filled the air above the chamber. Everyone watched in silence as the true history of the galaxy unfolded before them. They saw the progenitors in their glory, a species so advanced they had mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. They saw how the progenitors had eventually transcended physical form, leaving behind their technology and structures. Then they saw the Crithani, primitive and barely spacefaring, stumbling upon a progenitor facility. They watched as the Crithani learned to use the technology without understanding it. They saw how the Crithani kept this secret, using the progenitors' tools to intimidate and dominate other species. They witnessed the formation of the Dominion, built not on shared progress, but on one species' monopoly of stolen knowledge. The hologram showed how the Crithani had created the hierarchy of categories to keep other species subordinate, how they had destroyed species that asked too many questions, how they had maintained their power for thousands of generations through lies and carefully controlled information. By the time the hologram ended, the chamber was in chaos. Species were shouting at each other in dozens of languages. Some were angry, some were horrified, some seemed relieved, as if they had always suspected the truth but never had proof. "This is propaganda," Velquin shouted, rising from his seat. "Lies created by a species that seeks to undermine Dominion unity. The humans have fabricated this to excuse their own primitiveness." "Then explain the crystal," Sarah challenged. "It's made of progenitor technology. Have your own scientists examine it. They'll confirm it's real and that there's no way we could have created it ourselves." "The Void Trial itself is proof enough," Captain Rodriguez added, his military bearing, making him look imposing despite being shorter than most of the aliens present. "In 200,000 years, no Dominion species completed the trial. We did it in a week. Doesn't that tell you something about the difference between stolen knowledge and earned innovation?" Velquin opened his mouth to respond, but another voice cut him off. "I move that we examine the crystal." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was the Elorian representative, Commander Thaxazar, a massive being covered in natural armor plating. "If it is a forgery, our scientists will discover it quickly. If it is genuine, then we deserve to know the truth." "Seconded," said a voice from the Vex Collective. For the first time since Sarah had met them, the hive mind seemed divided, some tentacles moving independently of others, as if different parts were arguing with themselves. "This is highly irregular," Velquin protested. "The Council should decide such matters in private, not in open assembly." "The Council has been deciding things in private for too long," came a small voice. Sarah looked down to see Piptak, the Tilar who had warned her months ago, standing in the observers section. His voice was shaking with fear, but he continued speaking. "Maybe it's time for all of us to see the truth together." Other voices joined in, species after species calling for transparency. Velquin looked around the chamber, seeing his control slipping away. Finally, with visible reluctance, he nodded. Very well. The crystal will be examined by a team of scientists from multiple species. Until their report is complete, this assembly is in recess. The next 3 days were the most tense of Sarah's life. The human crews remained on their ships, essentially under house arrest, while Dominion scientists studied the crystal. Sarah spent the time making quiet contacts with representatives from various species, especially those from Categories 3, 4, and 5 who had the most to gain from Dominion reform. She met with Piptok and his people, sharing her experiences and listening to their stories of oppression. She spoke with the Elorians, who, despite being Category 1, seemed uncomfortable with the Chthoni's dominance. She even had a secret meeting with members of the Vex Collective who had begun to question the unity of their hive mind, wondering if they had been suppressing individual thought to maintain the status quo. On the third day, the assembly was called again. The lead scientist, a Category 2 species called the Thelnri, presented their findings. We have examined the crystal extensively, the scientist said in a neutral tone. The technology used to create it is beyond anything the Dominion possesses. The information contained within is consistent with archaeological evidence we have from ancient sites, and the mathematical proofs included cannot be fabricated. They describe fundamental truths about the universe that we are only beginning to understand. The scientist paused, then added, In our professional opinion, this crystal is genuine progenitor work. Everything it claims about Dominion history appears to be accurate. The chamber erupted again. This time, Velquin couldn't restore order. Species were standing, shouting, demanding answers. Some of the Category 1 species looked angry, clearly having known the truth and benefited from it. Others looked shocked, realizing they had been used. How long? Demanded a Category 3 representative. How long have you known? This changes nothing, Velquin insisted. So our ancestors found technology instead of inventing it. So what? We have still maintained peace and order for millennia. We have prevented wars and guided species toward prosperity. You've maintained control, Sarah corrected coldly. There's a difference. You've kept species like the Tillar as little more than slaves. You've suppressed innovation because it might threaten your position. You've destroyed anyone who got too close to the truth. That's not peace. That's tyranny. And what would you have us do? Velquin shot back. Dissolve the Dominion? Let chaos reign? The galaxy needs order, needs leadership. Without the Dominion, there would be war and destruction. Maybe, Sarah conceded, or maybe species would finally have the chance to grow and develop on their own terms. Maybe without being forced into your rigid hierarchy, civilizations could reach their true potential. Commander Thaxazar stood, his armored form imposing in the holographic light. The human speaks truth. I have served the Dominion my entire life, as have my ancestors for hundreds of generations. But I did not serve to maintain a lie. I served because I believed in the ideals the Dominion claimed to represent. If those ideals were false from the beginning, then what have we been protecting? I agree, said another Category 1 representative, this time from a species Sarah didn't recognize. The Dominion must reform or dissolve. The current structure is built on deception. Velquin looked around desperately as support crumbled. Even some Chthoni in the chamber seemed uncertain, their telepathic bond apparently not strong enough to overcome individual conscience. You would throw away 200,000 years of civilization because of what some humans claim? Not claim, Sarah corrected. Prove. And we're not asking you to throw anything away. We're asking you to build something better, something honest. She walked to the center of the chamber, looking up at all the assembled species. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We're too new for that, too inexperienced. But we've learned something in our short time among you. We've learned that the best societies aren't built on hierarchy and control. They're built on cooperation and mutual respect. Every species has something to contribute, regardless of how advanced they are.